always mobile. She wandered down South Clark Street, flaring with purple-white arc lights, and looked in at its windows that displayed a pawnbroker's glittering wares, or, just next door, a flat-topped stove over which a white-capped magician whose face smacked of the galley performed deft tricks with a pancake turner. Southern chicken dinner, a lying sign read, with waffles and real maple syrup, 35 cents. Past these windows promenaded the Clark Street women, hard-eyed, high-heeled, aigretted. On the street corners loafed the Clark Street men, blue-shaven, wearing checked suits, soiled fawn-top shoes, and diamond scarf pins. And even as she watched them fascinated, they vanished. Clark Street changed overnight, and became a business thoroughfare, lined with stately office buildings, boasting marble and gold leaf banks, filled with hurrying clerks, stenographers, and prosperous bond salesmen. It was like a sporting man who, thriving in middle age, endeavors to live down his shady past. Fanny discovered Cottage Grove Avenue, and Halsted Street, and Jefferson, and South State, where she should never have walked. There is an ugliness about Chicago's ugly streets that, for sheer, naked brutality, is equaled nowhere in the world. London has its foul streets, smoke-blackened, sinister, but they are ugly as crime is ugly, and as fascinating. It is like the ugliness of an old hag who has lived a life, and who could tell you strange tales if she would. Walking through them you think of Fagin, of Children of the Ghetto, of Tales of Mean Streets. Naples is honeycombed with narrow, teeming alleys, grimed with the sediment of centuries, colored like old Stilton, and smelling much worse. And where is there another Cottage Grove Avenue? Sylvan misnomer. A hideous street, and sordid. A street of flat-wheeled cars, of delicatessen shops and moving picture houses, of clanging bells, of frowsy women, of men who dart around corners with pitchers, their coat collars turned up to hide the absence of linen. One day Fanny found herself at 51st Street, and there before her lay Washington Park, with its gracious meadow, its Italian garden, its rose walk, its lagoon, and drooping willows. But then that was Chicago, all contrast. The Illinois Central Railroad puffed contemptuous cinders into the great blue lake, and almost in the shadow of the City Hall nestled Bathhouse John's groggery. Michigan Avenue fascinated her most. Here was a street developing before one's eyes. To walk on it was like being present at a birth. It is one of the few streets in the world. New York has 2, Paris 100, London none, Vienna 1. Berlin, before the war, knew that no one walked Unter den Linden but American tourists and German shopkeepers from the provinces with their fat wives. But this Michigan Boulevard, unfinished as Chicago itself, shifting and changing daily, still manages to take on a certain form and rugged beauty. It has about it a gracious breath. As you turn into it from the crash and thunder of Wabash, there comes to you a sense of peace. That's the sweep of it, and the lake just beyond, for Michigan Avenue is a one-side street. Its west side is a sheer mountain wall of office buildings, clubs, and hotels, whose ground floors are fascinating with specialty shops. A milliner tantalizes the passerby with a single hat stuck knowingly on a carved stick. An art store shows 2 etchings and a vase. A jeweler's window holds square blobs of emeralds on velvet, and perhaps a gold mesh bag, sprawling limp and invertebrate, or a diamond and platinum La Valliere, chastely barbaric. Past these windows, from Randolph to 12th, surges the crowd, matinee girls, all white fox, and giggles and orchids, wise-eyed saleswomen from the smart specialty shops, dressed in next week's mode, art students hugging their precious flat packages under their arms, immigrants, in corduroys and shawls, just landed at the 12th Street station, sightseeing families, dazed and weary, from Kansas, tailored and sabled Lakeshore Drive dwellers, convention delegates spilling out of the Auditorium Hotel, red-faced, hoarse, with satin badges pinned to their coats, and their hats, the wrong kind, stuck far back on their heads, music students to whom Michigan Avenue means the Fine Arts Building. There you have the west side. But just across the street the walk is as deserted as though a pestilence lurked there. Here the Art Institute rears its smoke-blackened face, and Grant Park's greenery struggles bravely against the poisonous breath of the Illinois Central engines. Just below 12th Street, block after block shows the solid plate glass of the automobile shops, their glittering wares displayed against an absurd background of Oriental rugs, Tiffany lamps, potted plants, and mahogany. In these windows posed the salesmen, no less sleek and glittering than their wares. Just below these, for a block or two, rows of sinister looking houses, fallen into decay, with slatternly women lolling at their windows, and gas jets flaring blue in dim hallways. Below 18th, still another change, where the fat stone mansions of Chicago's old families, save the mark, hide their diminished heads behind signs that read, Marguerite, Robe et Manteau, and Smolkin, Tailor. Now you know that women buyers for mail order houses do not spend their Saturday afternoons and Sundays thus, prowling about a city streets. Fanny Brandeis knew it, too, in her heart. She knew that the Ella Monahans of her world spent their holidays in stayless relaxation, manicuring, mending a bit, skimming the Sunday papers, massaging crow's feet somewhat futilely. She knew that women buyers do not, as a rule, catch their breath with delight at the sight of the pockmarked old Field Columbian Museum in Jackson Park, softened and beautified by the kindly gray chiffon of the lake mist, and tinted by the rouge of the sunset glow, so that it is a thing of spectral loveliness. Successful mercantile women, seeing the furnace glare of the South Chicago steel mills flaring a sullen red against the lowering sky, do not draw a disquieting mental picture of men toiling there, naked to the waist, and glistening with sweat in the devouring heat of the fires. I don't know how she tricked herself. I suppose she said it was the city's appeal to the country dweller, but she lied, and she knew she was lying. She must have known it was the spirit of Molly Brandeis in her, and of Molly Brandeis's mother, and of her mother's mother's mother, down the centuries to Sarah, repressed women, suffering women, troubled, patient, nomadic women, struggling now in her for expression. And Fanny Brandeis went doggedly on, buying and selling infants' wear, and doing it expertly. Her office desk would have interested you. It was so likely to be littered with the most appealing bits of apparel. A pair of tiny crocheted booties, pink and white, a sturdy linen smock, a silken hood so small that one's doubled fist filled it. The new catalog was on the presses. Fanny had slaved over it, hampered by Slosson. Fenger had given her practically a free hand. Results would not come in for many days. The Christmas trade would not tell the tale, for that was always a time of abnormal business. The dull season following the holiday rush would show the real returns. Slosson was discouragement itself. His attitude was not resentful, it was pitying, and that frightened Fanny. She wished he would storm a little. Then she read her department catalog proof sheets, and these reassured her. They were attractive, and the new baby book had turned out very well, with a colored cover that would appeal to anyone who had ever been or seen a baby. September brought a letter from Theodore. A letter from Theodore meant just one thing. Fanny hesitated a moment before opening it. She always hesitated before opening Theodore's letters. While she hesitated, the old struggle would rage in her. I don't owe him anything, the thing within her would say. God knows I don't. What have I done all my life but give and give and give to him? I'm a woman. He's a man. Let him work with his hands as I do. He's had his share. More than his share. Nevertheless, she had sent him 1,000 of the 6,000 her mother had bequeathed to her. She didn't want to do it. She fought doing it. But she did it. Now, as she held this last letter in her hands and stared at the Bavarian stamp, she said to herself, he wants something. Money. If I send him some I can't have that new tailor suit. Or the furs. And I need them. I'm going to have them. She tore open the letter. Dear old Fan, Olga and I are back in Munich, as you see. I think we'll be here all winter, though Olga hates it. She says it isn't lustig. Well, it isn't Vienna, but I think there's a chance for a class here of American pupils. Munich's swarming with Americans, whole families who come here to live for a year or two. I think I might get together a very decent class, backed by Auer's recommendations. Teaching! Good God, how I hate it! But Auer is planning a series of 20 concerts for me. They ought to be a success if slaving can do it. I work 6 hours a day all summer. I wanted to spend the summer, most of it that is, in Holzhausen am Ammersee, which is a little village or artist colony in the valley, an hour's ride from here, and within sight of the Bavarian Alps. We had Kurt Stein's little villa for almost nothing. But Olga was bored, and she wasn't well, poor girl, so we went to Interlaken, and it was awful. And that brings me to what I want to tell you. There's going to be a baby.